Alright, so I've been doing quite a bit of writing over the last couple of days, so I'm going to try out this video thing. And I'm going to start this off with a very simple quote. Ordering drinks always floored me. I don't know whiskey from gin and never managed to get anything I really liked the taste of. Buddy Willard and the other college boys I knew were usually too poor to buy hard liquor, and they scorned drinking altogether. I'll have a vodka, I said. Just plain, I said. I always have it plain. I thought I might make a fool of myself by saying I'd have it with ice or soda or gin or anything. So I wanted to start with that one because of its simplicity, of its universal nature, because it's a idea in general most people can relate to and understand. You're dealing with the concept of your first drink, and I can personally remember the first time I had a drink, and most people can recollect that idea and that concept, which brings into this idea of a Bildungsroman, and how the bell jar is both both atypical and typical of the Bildungsroman story. You're going to have both aspects of the story, both aspects of a Bildungsroman in the bell jar. You're going to have it from the female perspective, which is supposed to be the atypical Bildungsroman, and these situations that everyone can relate to. What I'd like to do is I would like to compare it to what I consider to be more of a male Bildungsroman, but a Bildungsroman in the sense that it also deals with the idea of suicide. And I'm going to take a little bit of a reading here from Paul's Case by Willa Cather, which you remember we've read. So it's this good old book. And I want to go for this quote right here. He had never lied for pleasure, even at school, but to be noticed and admired, to assert his difference from the other Cordelia Street boys. And he felt a good deal more manly, more honest, even now that he had no need for boastful pretensions. So this is Paul's need to stand out, need to be one or different. And I actually reminded me of one of the early parts in the bell jar when the conversation just turns to Doreen. She says, I'd never known a girl like Doreen before. Doreen came from a society girls' college down south and had bright white hair standing out in a cotton candy fluff. Then it goes on to say, Doreen singled me out right away. She made me feel I was that much sharper than the others, and she really was wonderfully funny. So Doreen herself helped her stand out from everybody else. It helped her become just different, just from all those other girls in the school. So Esther had that that foundation, even though Doreen's kind of crazy. So these are the foundations of a typical Bildungsroman story. You have these characters that need to figure out lessons on their own. They're trying to figure out who they are, and they're stuck inside these boundaries of whether they be societal or personal. And typical is your young man coming of age, fighting someone, learning about who he is. I've read plenty of those stories. And obviously, there are some concepts in the bell jar that are quite different than a male Bildungsroman story. I have never experienced some of the things that I read about in this novel, which was quite interesting to look at. I'm going to jump right to near the end of the novel with a sex scene. Go right into the dirty. She is talking about it. She says, but all I felt was a sharp, startling, bad pain. It hurts, I said. Is it supposed to hurt? And he didn't say anything. And after a little while, Irwin got up and went to the bathroom, and I heard a rushing of shower water. I wasn't sure if Irwin had done what he planned to do, or if my virginity had obstructed him in some way. That's definitely not typical Bildungsroman story. That's a perspective that, as far as I know, really hasn't been approached too much in literature at all. So that's where Sylvia Plath, it's part of kind of a boundary that she approaches, uh, and why the book probably was very limited in the United States for quite some time. Um, and it really caught me off guard a little bit. I wasn't expecting it, and trying to relate it to the Bildungsroman stories that I typically read, um, it makes sense. So she is becoming a woman. She is dealing with the thoughts of like her friends committing suicide, a suicide attempt of her own. She's dealing with learning and like college and growing up and not and just her personality and writing. She's jealous, or she's it's not necessarily a jealousy, but you talk about sex in the sense that she feels the need to sleep with someone else other than Buddy. Um, she has it's almost a necessity to take care of it because she wanted to make sure that they were even. But in the same sense, that's not the same way like a man's Bildungsroman works. It works in the sense that when you're a man, you're supposed to sleep with someone and you go around and give each other high fives. That's not really her goal. Her goal is to become even with her, and she literally says, ever since Buddy Willard had told me about that waitress, I've been thinking I had to go out and sleep with somebody myself. Sleeping with Buddy wouldn't count, though, because it would still be one person ahead of me. Uh, I feel like, in some ways, that's a boundary that's been broken down, especially in relationships today. But this is just one example of the difference in the Bildungsroman stories. When you're a man, you're supposed to go out and experience those things, and you see that with, I believe it's Eric, who has to go out and sleep with a whore, and it's part of like an initiation process. But Esther, on the other hand, is trying to just make the numbers even. It's not really anything in particular of becoming a woman. It's making numbers even so that she can be even with Buddy. Um, and that's where I disagree a little bit with it being strictly atypical, because it still is a coming of age story, and I've always seen it as a coming of age story. I don't look at it a coming of age story thing. Typically, a young boy growing up and learning how to be a man and learning how to do what he needs to do. This is just the first time that it's basically been done with a woman. I've read quite a bit this year through this class and through my other literature classes about different women and different things they had to deal with. But this is the first one where you really get into the idea and the difficulty of a young girl becoming a woman. And that is what stands out. That is what makes a difference to me in between the different novels. So I think you shouldn't label it a typical Bildungsroman. I think it's just a Bildungsroman in itself, and I think it is a prime example of breaking down some of the boundaries that we've looked at in other novels and other stories and other pieces of literature earlier this semester, while breaking down different boundaries. And you obviously see different stories now where it's a woman's coming of age story and things from that perspective, but this was definitely a mark of its time. And on that note, I'm going to end my cheesy discussion. Pretty awkward, but that's okay by me. Kind of fit along right with the book as far as just being a 22-year-old guy reading this kind of novel, along with other novels that I've read in other classes, including Push and some other things dealing with transgendered issues. Learned a lot more about that side that you don't typically do on the main novel stand of a man's story. All right, thank you.